My name is Steve Fineman. I'm the managing partner at Leaf, Cabraser, Hyman & Bernstein. I'm resident in the firm's New York office. I was on the Public Justice Board from 2002 to 2018. I was the president in 2011 and 12, and I was a member of the executive committee of the board from 2006 to 2015. Sure. I got involved in the late 1990s when my friend Rob Gordon, a partner at Whites & Luxembourg, introduced me to the organization. He was longtime friends with the head of public justice, Arthur Bryant, at the time. And I started participating in public justice events, meetings. I helped with a couple amici. And I liked that I could contribute to the public interest in a non-for-profit context. And so I got more and more involved with the organization to the point where in 2002 I was asked to join the board. During my tenure, so in that period 2002 to 18, we grew in membership, we grew in the size of the staff, the scope of the work, the budget got a lot bigger. Our ambition obviously got a lot bigger as well. We changed our name to reflect an increasingly broad constituency and expanding and diverse caseload. We opened the West Coast office. Our website, social media presence, fundraising all became more sophisticated and larger. Our annual galas became huge. I don't know if you remember, but they weren't so grand back in the day, and over time they became must-attend events. Featuring amazing speakers. We had a President of the United States at one of our events. The Trial Lawyer of the Year award became one of the, if not the most prestigious and coveted recognitions of plaintiff's bar. And of course we transitioned from Arthur Bryant to Paul Bland as the head of the organization. So I saw a lot of change and expansion over the years I was involved. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm actually responsible for having recruited a number of leaders over the years. Eric Kramer, for example, the immediate past president, Tom Sobel, a longtime board member and executive committee member, president-elect. So yeah, so I recruited well. Well, I think what happened first was pretty soon after I started, I was involved in creating the Class Action Preservation Project. Which we know is CAP in the organization, and that was because I had a concern about some tension between lawyers who handled primarily personal injury cases and lawyers who were handling class cases, and in those days there was a little bit of a conflict, and public justice had been involved in a number of class cases, civil rights cases, public interest cases. So with some others, we created CAP for the purpose of promoting and supporting class action practice that served the interests of consumers, investors, victims of civil rights abuses, and so on. And that, I think, raised my profile within the board. And within leadership, and then that led to me going on the executive committee first, I believe, in 2006, when I became president. I think mostly what we wanted to accomplish was to try to professionalize the operation a little bit. And I don't mean that pejoratively, I just mean by that point we had grown into a different organization than we had been a decade earlier. And so things like best accounting practices, best supervision of the law firm practices, best fundraising practices, all things, best just management practices, are all things that we felt could be improved. And with support of the staff, that's what we tried to do during that time period. And I was building on what Harry Ditzler had done before me, and Jack Landskroner, my dear late friend Jack Landskroner, did the same thing as he succeeded me, and so on. Our role on the board, I think, has evolved over the last few years. I can't really speak to what the thinking is behind it. I think certainly I found when I was the chair, and I had past presidents both on the executive committee and around me. So I'm thinking of Harry Ditzler and Mona Wallace and Jeff Goldberg and Al Brayton. I found Gerson Smoger. I found all of those people to be incredibly helpful in making decisions. And I found their contributions at board meetings to be extraordinarily helpful. I had been around a long time. I mean, to be on any board for that long, so many years, is long enough. And I felt like that, I got to a point where I felt it was time for other people's voices to be heard. But I've stayed involved, and I continue to raise money for the organization, I think you know, and I frequently speak with Paul Bland and other members of the board. I just think that there comes a time when it's time to let the next generation and people who haven't had so much airtime have their moment. I think that the talent level on the board is also extraordinary. And I think what's been impressive to watch over the years about public justice is how we've been able to continually nurture and bring on new fantastic board members, and how board members who have been around a little bit have graduated into leadership positions on the board and the organization. And I think as long as that continues, as long as you have amazing lawyers and as long as you have stellar leadership from Paul Bland and others, I think there's no reason why the organization can't continue to be successful and grow. I'd break it into really two significant parts. On the one hand, it's been an extraordinary privilege to, as I said earlier, to be able to contribute to this amazing organization that is doing such extraordinary work for the public good and the public interest. And having had the opportunity to be a leader of that organization in different capacities, whether it was leading CAP or being a board member or being on the executive committee or serving as president, was a real honor and a real pleasure to do. The second thing is that I made extraordinary lifelong friendships with the people that I worked with over the years in the organization, and that's a special thing, and it's not every professional environment you go into do you come out of it with relationships that have such meaning. Yeah, so Jack Landskroner was a dear friend of mine, dating back to before I was president. I don't remember the exact year when we first connected, but it was relatively early in my tenure on the board when Jack joined the board, a lawyer from Cleveland. Jack and I hit it off almost immediately as kindred spirits. And we became very close over the years. He succeeded me as the president, and I served under him during his administration. And we remained friends throughout our public justice days. And then after our public justice days, our families were friends. My wife Lori and I traveled with Jack and Heather and spent some holidays with them. We're very dear friends. And as you know, Jack, a couple of years ago, became very ill with cancer, and he passed away this past summer. And his memorial, which was in Cleveland, was an extraordinary event. There were a number of public justice people there. Paul Bland, Dan Bryson, Esther Berezovsky, Roger Mandel, and some others. And it was a great opportunity to honor his life and recognize what a complete force of nature Jack was. Loved life, loved his friends, had the uncanny ability to make any person he was with feel like they were the most important person to him, which is a rare gift. And Jack will be sorely missed by not only by me, of course, but by all of his friends and everybody who knew him. I mentioned some of them. So my immediate predecessors, Harry Ditzler, Mona Wallace, Jeff Goldberg, Al Brayton, Gerson Smoger, they were all influential. They were all helpful. I learned a lot from them all. I always found especially when I was just starting off, when I was just getting going with public justice in the late '90s, early 2000s, Mike Withey always stood out to me as somebody who who always had a lot of positive energy and incredible contributions to make. Um, uh, but I also learned a lot from people who came after me. Esther Berezovsky, for example, was a very good friend and companion to have around with the time we were during my presidency. She was great, gave great advice to me. Brad Moore, again, another a wonderful president who I learned a lot from even before he became president. I'm sure I'm missing others, but those are some of the people who really stand out. So some of the original founders of the original people there, um, the ones I didn't really know a lot of them that well, because I was already, by the time I was president in 2011, 12, the organization had already been around for quite a while, um, and some of the early presidents I didn't know. Um, um, so yeah, so I mean, some of the more famous people who started the organization. I mean, Joan Claybrook was not a president, but she was one of the original people who was always present during the years I was involved in. I enjoyed learning from her and talking to her and arguing and debating with her um, quite a bit. One of the highlights of any board meeting was always the presentation by our clients, the staff attorneys coming to a meeting, bringing a client who would tell their story in their words. And those experiences were always very moving and reminded us why we were doing what we were doing.